never losing all the passion. All this love is my obsession.
Hello everyone,
oh my
and
gosh,
welcome to another Bubble Talk. It's already Thursday night. I hope you guys had a wonderful week. We're just moving into the sunset of the work week, and I hope that you guys are enjoying it so far. A lot of people calling me, telling me this is perfect timing for today's topic, which is overcoming fears. I'm sure you guys watched the trailer, right? The trailer's pretty, I know. Yes, I know. It's pretty, I don't scream like a guy very well, right? So, like, I should be like, but you know, my voice goes a little bit high. It's like the cockroach video, if some of you have seen that on my Instagram or not. So, what are you guys drinking right now? Right now, I do have a bubble tea, and this is organic roasted oolong tea with herbal jelly. Oh, this is great. It's like real good quality tea. What are you guys drinking? I'm sure some of you guys are drinking bubble tea, right? I guess. All right, so everyone, just want to tell you guys a little bit of shout-outs first. I got some shout-outs that I need to see. Right, shout-outs on YouTube. There's Hannah, Diane, and Rosarin. Thank you for coming in early. You guys were chatting up a storm earlier on in the room. Thanks for coming in early. On Facebook, we had Ivan, Nico, and Yongjin. Thank you for coming out early over there, too. And just want to tell you guys right now is questions can be asked right away. Already on YouTube, there's already a question asked. So anytime during the talk, if something inspires you, comes in your head like, oh, I want to know this question, just pop it in the room right away. If you pop it in the room, we'll have people there to take those questions and put it into what you call the order, the sequence of questions that are coming in. So thank you already for putting your questions. Also, winners from last week's Bubble Talk. We have Yongjin in Malaysia. I think there's one more, no? There was one more. Oh, okay. There was I know Yongjin, and this does not look like him. It looks a little bit different here. This is what you call Photoshop, right? This is called Photoshop Extreme. We can start another entire show on why people do Photoshop Extreme. Either way, cool. Malaysia. I think there was Yongjin. Who was the other person that won last week? There was Hannah. Oh, Hannah won last week. That's right. Cool. All right. So let's see. So those are the winners, and we're going to give away some more bubble tea today. Hope you guys are all going to enjoy this time. Today we're going to talk about overcoming fears. All right. So grab your drinks, your bubble teas, your coffees, waters, whatever it is, and we're going to begin today's bubble talk. So overcoming fears. What's the first question I want to ask everyone here is this, what are you afraid of? Okay, what are you afraid of? And I'm sure the things that we're afraid of, you know the feeling, right? The feeling is like there's something at the pit, like a pit in your stomach. And you get nervous, you get anxious, you get sweaty, right? And you like all these thoughts come to your head. And then sometimes you don't want to you come up with all these excuses like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Then you think, and then you're like, oh, but what if I fail? Or what if I look stupid? And then you don't do it at all. It could be stuff like, for some of us it's public speaking, presenting something in front of class, doing something new, or, just the feeling of not wanting people to like critique you, or like, the feeling of being embarrassed, right? This is something I learned when I was in Singapore. Among Singapore slang, I was playing volleyball with a group over there, and they would teach me this one word, right? And of course it wasn't for me, but it was for them. I'm just kidding. The word they taught me, the Singapore slang, it was the word paise, right? And they said that, oh, whenever you're embarrassed, you do something like so shameful, like people are like, oh man, so paise. And you have that feeling inside of shame. Like, oh, I never want to go through this again. So you may never try again in the thing that you're doing. Okay? So we are afraid of these things. We go through these feelings and whatnot. But let me tell you something first is, many great people have fear. Like, this is something across the board. Like, for myself, because I'm a pastor, I did missionary work, everything else, some of the people I look up to are people in the Bible. And people in the Bible, they're great people. However, it's very, very interesting because we look at great people like Abraham and Moses. You guys heard them. Joshua. Joshua was considered one of the bravest figures in the Bible. He went to war like 20 times. Can you imagine going to war 20 times? He never died, right? He never died. He went to war 20 times. But the interesting thing is, let me show you what God says to him in Joshua chapter 1, verse 9. You know what it says? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Now, here, you got to think about this. Even God is telling Joshua not to be afraid. Now, you got to think about this, guys. If God is telling you not to be afraid, what does that mean how Joshua's feeling at that moment? It means he's afraid. And if you read the entire book of Joshua, before every battle, God says the same thing. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Come on, man. Don't be afraid. We've done this like 12 times already, right? And every time Joshua's like, and God's like, hey, dude, don't be afraid. And this guy's supposed to be one of the bravest guys in the Bible, right? This guy's going to war. He could die anytime. Like, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to war every Thursday night for bubble talks, right? Right before every bubble talk, I'm like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, what's going to happen? And of course, in my mind, I'm thinking like, I lied to myself. Everything's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You know what? You're not going to make a mistake. And if you do, doesn't matter. And I'll tell other people, you made a mistake? Doesn't matter. But inside your head, it's like, it matters, right? And you just want to like destroy your brain until it oozes out of your ears. And this is what happens, right? Even for myself, before I do every bubble talk or every other talk I do, and especially because it's live, there's no editing. Right? There's no editing, so whatever mistake is there, it's going to be there for eternity. Everyone's going to see the mistake forever until I erase it, and I'm not going to erase it, right? So what kind of wars do we go through, like Joshua did? Sometimes it's about moving to a new house, moving to a new area, leaving your friends, going to a new school, changing your major, changing your job, right? I'll tell you what happened today, guys. I had the craziest moment. I had some fear. Right before I came, I was at this mall called Sunway Pyramid, and I was in like the Apple store, and there was this iPad 11-inch, and I just looked at it. I was like, oh, I should buy this right now. They're like, oh yeah, the taxes included. I was like, oh really? And I sat there, and I swear I was gonna buy that. I was gonna buy it. I was ready to buy it, but then all of a sudden it comes into me, comes into my heart. Like, do you know how expensive that is? I was like, oh my gosh, it's so expensive. And I sat there for like 15 minutes, just like putting numbers in my phone. Like, what could I buy with this type of money? And I'm just like, oh, and I didn't end up buying it, right? A lot of times when it even comes to expensive purchases, we kind of get that scared, like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. Should I buy it or not? And then a lot of times we just don't buy it. And even when we need it, we don't buy it. Right? One of the things that I'm going to bring up to you today is this feeling of being very, very uncomfortable. Or people kind of say it like, oh, going out of your comfort zone. That's kind of one of those like cliche things. It's about being uncomfortable. So what I want to do today, I want to kind of, let's talk a little bit more deeply about what fear is. So what is fear? And the reason I want to talk about this is, very, very famous verse. I love this verse in the Bible. It's in Hosea 4:6. And basically it just says that people are destroyed from what they don't know. It's a lack of knowledge, right? And this is true. What you don't know causes you a lot of pain. What you don't know causes you to suffer a lot more than you think. And sometimes we just say to ourselves, oh, if I only knew. Oh, if I only knew, right? Haven't you guys ever had that time when it's like, oh, if I knew, I wouldn't have done that. I would have stayed if I knew that this person would have came. But in order for us to overcome fear, we need to learn really well. So, question, where does fear come from? Fear comes from your brain. And in your brain, you have something called the amygdala. Okay? I'm going to show you a little picture over here. This is the amygdala. See that little circle right there? This thing in your brain is like the size of 2 almonds. It's very, very small. And this part of your brain, the amygdala, has to deal with your survival. Right? So how do you survive? This is not something where it just generates and puts like extra strength into you. But way back in the times when human beings were living, we were afraid of animals and saber-toothed tigers and like lions, and they'd come to eat us. So it would generate fear. And when you generate fear, it's like, oh, fight or flight, and you'd run away. So the amygdala is something is in your brain, and one of the biggest things it does, it is for your survival, and it generates fear. Whenever there is danger, whenever there is risk, it helps you to survive. Right? Imagine you go to a soccer game. You're just watching the game. Some soccer player kicks it so hard, and then it goes towards the audience. What do all the people on the sideline do? They're like, ah! Some of them run, some of them duck, some of them do crazy stuff, right? They're like, oh, and everyone like runs and screams. That's part of your amygdala. Amygdala generates fear. When someone says, oh, everyone goes, ah, and then all of a sudden, everyone clears out of the way, or some people like just cover themselves so they don't get hit in the face. That's what your amygdala does. It helps you for survival, right? Like, how many times have you seen it when the ball's kicked and then all of a sudden the person is just like this, and he catches the ball. It never happens, right? They'd be like, ah! And if they catch it, they're like lucky, right? It's something like super lucky. It just never happens, right? So let me tell you what the problem with the amygdala is, okay? Even though this is the thing that helps us to survive, there's a problem with the amygdala. And the problem is it cannot tell the difference between what is good and bad danger. Now, what do you mean good and bad danger? Is there such thing as good and bad danger? Yeah, because there's bad danger if you're standing on the side of a cliff. You're going to get scared. You're going to hold on to something, right? That's bad danger. But there's other things that can be challenging, and they are uncomfortable, but it's good for us, right? There are risks that we take in life that are not bad. It's there to help us learn, right? Like being afraid of water, but you can learn how to swim, and it's going to help you out in life, right? That's something you can learn. One of the things we have to understand is your amygdala, because it can't tell the difference between a good challenge, a good risk, something you can learn and develop, and something that is a bad danger, it keeps you from learning and it keeps you from growing. Why? It just makes you want to be comfortable more than anything else. And this is why in your brain, come on, if you have a test coming next week, or a test coming in 3 days, or let's say 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away you have a test or a paper to write. Right now, you have 2 weeks left. Do you want to write the paper or do you want to watch Netflix? And the answer is you want to go Netflix because it's comfortable. That's what your brain is doing. It makes you want to take the comfortable choice. Right? That's what the amygdala does. You see, what happens is whenever you have fear, like let's say, have you ever heard the word triggered? Fear, whenever your fear is triggered, the first thing you want to do, and what the amygdala does, is it makes you try to avoid it. Like you don't want to do it. And like I said, it's good for dangers. If it's a bad thing, it's a good thing that you're avoiding it. But the problem is, it's not just good, it's good for danger, but it's bad for learning, and it's bad for growing. Right? And that's isn't it good to ask questions in class, to put your hand up and answer a question? These are good things you're learning from. It is. It's a good thing you're learning from it. However, your amygdala is like, no, because what if you get it wrong? What if everyone laughs at you? What if everyone thinks you're stupid? Or, it's like, oh, right? And what happens is you're kind of like, oh, and then you're like, oh, I don't want to ask my question anymore. I don't want to do any discussions anymore. Oh, I don't want to lead this project. Oh, I'd rather be someone just in the back, just doing like little things here. And I'll just contribute a little bit, and I'll gain a little bit from it. It's like saying with me, when I was playing basketball, man, how many people would want to take the last shot to win the game, and if you miss, you lose, right? That's why it's like, wow, people are afraid. And the interesting thing is, because of this, because of the amygdala, people basically choose not to struggle. They do. They choose not to struggle. So if you look in your past, right? No, not our past, but let's look at human beings' past. Let me tell you what's interesting about the way human beings were before. The reason why the amygdala was there in the past is because we didn't know when our next meal was going to be. And this is why we always took the comfortable thing. We'll take an easier prey, a smaller prey. We might eat a little bit, but it's better than having nothing. So way back in the past, we didn't know if we would have dinner. We didn't know if we would have lunch the next day. We didn't know if we would become lunch the next day. We didn't know. And because of that, we always took the easiest path. Get some berries, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. We don't know when we're going to eat next. Get those berries right now. Just eat them. Collect them and eat them right now. Hey, there's only a rabbit. It's fine. Even though it's for 25 of us, let's just eat it anyways, even if it's one bite. Because you didn't know. There's too much uncertainty. But you got to think about this. The environment has changed. How many of you right now are worried about dinner? Actually, some of you are eating dinner right now as you're watching. You're actually eating dinner, right? And you're not sitting there like going, oh no, if I eat the dinner right now, what am I going to eat for breakfast? What am I going to... And then put it this way. If you guys are thirsty, would you think to yourself, oh no, what will I drink? I have nothing to drink. Or do you go to the tap? Or do you have a bottle of water in your fridge? Or do you have like a can of juice or something like that, right? Or you could just go to the store around the corner like a 7-Eleven and just get anything there. The environment's changed. What we worry about has changed, but the thing that hasn't changed is your amygdala. It's still the same. It still functions the exact same way. So let me show you how extreme your amygdala is. Like I'm going to show you, this is what everyone goes through. How many of you are in your basement, right? Or like in a room, and you're watching a scary movie, okay? You're watching a scary movie, monsters, whatever, ghosts, whatever it is, okay? And then it finishes, and you start walking up the stairs, and then someone turns off the lights, and then what do? Ah! You start running up the stairs. Now, here's the thing. Are there ghosts in the room? Are there monsters in the room? And the answer is no. But the moment you turn off the lights, everyone freaks out and starts screaming, ah! And they start running up. There's no monsters in your basement. But that's how it works. That's how extreme it is. It just generates the fear because it's dark. It's got nothing to do if there's monsters or not. It's generating the fear, and then we freak out and we run up, even when we know there are no monsters. That's what's happening right now. The environment, the way we live has changed, but the brain still functions the same. So, why am I talking about this? Well, why is this so important for us? The thing you have to understand about this is fear. Fear is something that steals your chance to grow. So I want you guys to think about this right now in your mind, all of you, everywhere out in the internet world. I want you to think about this to yourself right now, is how many times has your fears taken away your opportunity to learn something, to do something better, to grow, to try something new? You could have done it. How many times? Think about all those times where you took the easy way, where you took a smaller responsibility, where you didn't take the risk, where you try something new, try something that would help you out even better in your life. How many times? We are usually always doing the easiest thing. Why? Because it's most comfortable. Think about it. How many times have you chosen not to do a hard thing, but you do an easy thing multiple times? It's like, oh, I don't want to speak in front of people, but then what you'll do is you'll go home and like you'll clean your room 3 times. It's so weird, right? That's what we do, right? So I'm going to give you, this is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's Proverbs 14:4. It might not even make any sense. It says, where there are no oxen, the manger's empty. It's like, duh, right? If there's no oxen, then there's no stall, right? And then it says, but from the strength of an ox come abundant harvest, which means this. It means that, yes, if you have an ox, right? You're going to have to clean the poop. You're going to have to feed it. You're going to have a stall. But if you don't have it, you never have to do any of that work. There's no struggle whatsoever. You're just comfortable not taking care of the oxen. However, if you have the oxen, it said abundant harvest can be made. Something greater can be made if you have it. But people try to avoid it altogether. Oh, you don't want to have an oxen. Why? Oh, because you know what? Oh, they're going to take care of it. I'm going to do this. Oh, it's so uncomfortable. But even in that uncomfort, that oxen will give you even a greater harvest in the end. And that's what's happening to us. That's what happens to us. There are so many things that will benefit us so greatly in our lives. These soft skills, the skills we learn, people skills, learning to interact, learning to speak in front of people, learning new skills, sports, whatever it is. And they are so beneficial. But yet, it's uncomfortable. Oh, I'm scared of the ball. Oh, I'm scared of this. And we don't learn it. We don't learn it. And we become like those people said, it's better not to have an oxen because I never have to clean it. But they will never have this great growth and big things in their life. And what happens is we become very unsatisfied. We become unsatisfied mainly because when you're stagnant and there's no growth, you're unsatisfied. Like, and let me ask you a question. Are you satisfied if you get the same birthday present every year? Like, honestly, would you be like, oh my gosh, another white shirt? Oh, thank you. I've got 15 of them already. Well, for me, I've got over 40 of them because I keep getting it every year, right? It's like, or imagine wearing the same clothes every day. How bored would you be? White shirt, black shorts, no socks with sandals. Every day. At a point you're going to be, well, actually, I'd be kind of comfortable with that too, unless it was the same shirt with the same underwear and the same, but even then, I don't want to wear the same thing. It's so boring. So, I'm going to bring up this to you right now is, how can we overcome? I'm going to give you 3 things. I'm not going to tell you, overcome, dude, don't be afraid, man. Just do it, man. Right? You know, haven't you heard people say that? Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Come on. And they have those motivational speeches. right? It's like, oh, be like a lion and a tiger that devours, right? And you kind of think they're like going, oh yeah, but then that's like the number one answer. People tell you, don't be afraid, don't be scared, don't do this, don't do that. And you're like, man, is that something that, does it really help? And a lot of people ask me this question is, how do I kill the fear inside of me, that animal of fear, how do I kill it? Or how do I destroy fear? Or how do I murder fear, right? And the answer is, you can't. It's the wrong question. It's not about killing, murdering, destroying, obliterating, annihilating, right? Abolishing. I don't know whatever word I can use, right? It's not about that. Why? Because it's fixed permanently in your brain. It's fixed permanently in your brain. What does that mean? The first thing I want to tell you more than anything else is, feeling fear is normal. It's not a bad thing. Why? If people keep telling you, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be scared, don't be scared, you know what happens? The moment you're scared, you feel ashamed. Oh, why am I scared? They told me not to be scared. So then you think to yourself that being scared is wrong, but it's not. Because being scared is normal. It is a normal part of your everyday life to have fear. It's okay. Whatever you try that's not it's your first time, you've never tried, it's a little bit uncomfortable, you will have fear no matter what. Do not think that having fear having fear, don't let it say to you, oh, there's something wrong with me, because there's not. Don't let it make you think to yourself, oh, maybe I'm not smart enough, because it's nothing to do with that. Think about it. We just gave you the example of you just watched a movie downstairs, someone turns off the lights and you freak out and you run out because your amygdala freaked out, even though you were just in that room for like 3 hours. If there was a monster there, it would have came out already. This is where it's kind of going crazy in here, right? So you got to think about this to yourself. Fear is a normal thing. It just pops up. It does, whenever anything's uncomfortable. So whenever you feel fear, first thing I want you to understand is, it's okay. It's normal. You're not going to get rid of it. If your role is to destroy fear, you will never do it because you can never get rid of your amygdala. Well, you could by surgery, but I don't recommend it. Yeah. So number one is, it's okay. Don't worry about feeling fear. The second thing I want to kind of advise you today is this. Overcoming your fear is not some type of magic voodoo trick, hypnotism, something like that. It's all like, abracadabra, la 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 la, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can overcome fear now. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It's so crazy to think that way. As I tell you, with every single bubble talk, it is, all the things I'm teaching you is all about skill. Even overcoming fear is actually a skill. It's a skill you have to work on every day. Right? I'm going to tell you now, think about it. Just today, I was going to buy an iPad, but I didn't because I sat there like, and I kept checking it's weird. You know what the weird thing about me is? I keep checking like currency rates. It's so weird. It's like, well, what is that in American dollars? Ooh. Well, what is that in Canadian dollars? Oh. And I keep checking it, and then you know what I do after that? I start checking like Apple Canada, Apple US to see what the prices are to compare it. It's so dumb. I'm dead serious. It's so dumb, right? But I have this, I don't know, there's a lot of money. Yeah. Overcoming fear is a skill. You got to exercise it, strengthen it all the time. And we're going to go through it all the time. Some of them you'll win, some of them you won't. But as you practice and strengthen your overcoming of fear, what's going to happen is you're going to start to win a lot more than you lost in the past. I'm not going to say you're going to win everything. Right? Some things are hard because some things are really, really big for us. And we're not going to win every time. I don't think anyone wins every time because there's always a bigger fear out there. But as you slowly strengthen it more and more, you'll be able to overcome and do much more. And that's my second advice for you. The third and the last advice I want to give to you in the mindset I told you before is, you can't kill fear. You got to remember that. You can never kill it. It's something, if you think if that's your goal, you will never win. It is impossible to kill fear. It is part of your mental process. It's a part of the way your brain functions. It's just like chemicals and neurons firing here and there, and it's just doing what it naturally does. You can't really change it. But I'll tell you this. When I watch like sports highlights, you know baseball? Everyone knows baseball, right? And they, when sometimes you hit the ball and it goes into the crowd, everyone, all you see is the whole crowd like a wave go, and they're all like trying to dodge the ball. But every once in a while, you'll see this one guy just go, and he just catches it. And you're like, what the heck? And they're like, hey, who are you? It's like, oh, no, I'm a Navy SEAL. I was like, oh, no wonder. Right? It's like, oh, no, I'm not scared. I'm usually being shot at. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, they're a lot more harder to catch, the bullets, right? He's like, right? But he's just like a baseball. He's like, he probably eats it after or something, right? So, and he's basically trained to go against higher and higher things where the smaller things don't really matter to him. You can train it. You really, really can, right? Your fear will always be there, but the biggest thing you have to do is you need to start understanding it and working together with your fear. I'm serious. Work together with it, which means you know it's going to be there no matter what now, right? You know it's going to be there no matter what. So that's the number one thing. Okay, it's going to be there no matter what. Which means that it now becomes something you learn from. What does that mean? Is, we have the fears that are obvious, like jumping off a cliff doesn't make sense. You're gonna be scared. If you're in a high place, you're gonna be scared. If there's venomous snakes around, you're gonna be scared. Those are obvious things. But when it comes to the other things, this actually becomes an indicator for you that you're about to do something big. You're about to do something you're gonna learn from. You're about to do something that's going to benefit you and develop you. Which means that when you start to understand your fear really well, do the opposite. That's what you're learning from it. Oh, my body's saying this because it's triggering me in this way. But this is something that's going to be a great opportunity for me. So then you start looking it up more and doing more of it. All right? I really hope that you guys learned a lot today when it comes to overcoming fears. Like I said, every week we're not going to do so much of the step 1, make a schedule. Step 2, beat yourself in the head 10 times every time you have fear. I'm not going to do that kind of stuff, right? This one stuff I want to talk a little bit more about understanding first in your mind and what type of mindset and mentality you need before you get into overcoming it, okay? So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. Those of you who are here for the first time on Facebook, I just want to tell you guys, all of the Bubble Talks, today is number 24. This is the 24th Bubble Talk, which means we have 23 other Bubble Talks on our YouTube channel, Espresso with Sky. We'll put the link in the room so you guys can click it, subscribe it, and click the notification bell so you know when we have any new uploads and also when we go live. This Saturday, which means 2 days from now, we are going to have our deeper Bible studies for those of you who want. We've already got a bunch of people signing up every single week. So if you want to sign up, we're going to put that in the room so you can sign up for Bible study, which means that we're going to go a little bit deeper into it. But also on top of it, it's going to be a little bit more intimate where we're going to talk on Zoom and we can see each other face to face. And there'll be smaller groups. So it's not going to be like 10,000 people. You're going to ask the question like, personal things. We don't want to do that, right? But it'll be much, much more deeper and something that's more personal and you guys can even make friends with people from all around the world. Right now we have people in Singapore, Indonesia, we have Malaysia, we have Indonesia, Philippines, a bunch of places like that too. So if you want to join in, I think someone from Mongolia will be joining in from next week also. So if you want to join into that, go ahead. We'll put that link in the room for you guys to sign up. Now, we're going to go into question and answer. And during the question and answer, we're going to be giving away some bubble tea. There'll be a question that pops up sometime during the question and answer time. So I'm going to give you guys about 2.5 seconds before we start. All right, I lied. It's about 3.5 seconds. Okay, let's go into the questions of the day. First question from Amy in KL. Wow, a lot of questions today. First question is, how do you train the skills of overcoming your fears? Cool, good question. So the second advice I gave to you was overcoming fear is a skill. So how do you train the skill of overcoming your fears? One thing to train it is you have to actually face your fears, right? Do it. Even though you're oh, I'm scared to do this, public speaking, try it out. Which means what? I'm going to tell you this. This is what even people who do writings and poetry when they're reading it, do you know who they read to first? They read to their cats. They say cats are very good to read to. They'll stick around, but they say that dogs are terrible. No, is it the opposite? No. Dogs are easy to read to, but cats will just kind of walk away and do whatever they want. But the dogs will give you attention. Start with the dogs. Start with the mirror, right? Start speaking in front of a mirror. Start speaking in front of dogs, right? Start speaking in front of cats, whatever it is, right? Start with something to slowly begin to overcome these fears, right? When it comes to sports, some people don't like sports, right? Well, in one case, at least go to the sports, learn a couple of skills, but you might not play the game. Right? So there's lots of different things you can do to practice it. Is like, oh, I'm scared of the ball. I'm scared of this. Then you have to buy a ball and, start playing with the ball first yourself and see what it's like, right? It's always something you can do, like little steps to get you to train yourself to overcome these little fears, right? And that's why when it comes to public speaking, it's supposed to be like, in America, people are more afraid of public speaking than of death. It's like crazy as that sounds. They're more scared of public speaking than death. And what exercises are? Speak in the mirror, and then speak to your dogs or cats, your animals, even your gerbils or hamsters, whatever it is, right? And you keep going and you move yourself up, where you try your family, or even little bits and pieces of it, right? So you need to train it, all right? Good question, Amy. Let's go over to Selangor and Vera. Vera says, how do you not run away and face your fears? How do you not run away? So this is a very interesting thing. Running away is like going to be your first reaction, no matter what, right? Especially if you've never done this before. One of your first reactions is going to be like, ah, and you run away, okay? Now, how do I stop running away is, yes, you may run away at first, but come back. Just come back, right? It's like, right? You have to go back, right? In the beginning, you're not going to be able to face it right away. Sometimes it takes you a couple days to get back to it. Sometimes it takes you 2 days, 1 day. Sometimes it takes you a couple hours, right? You have to train yourself and exercise this type of mentality in your head so that you go back into it, right? And that's why facing your fears is a tough thing. It really is. And that's why everyone understands that it's tough. And sometimes it's good that you have someone with you that can encourage you also, right? So if anything, how do you stop running away? Sometimes you run away first and then come back. And just make sure that coming back is shorter and shorter. It might take you 5 weeks in the beginning, and then 2 weeks, and then 1 week, and then 4 days, and then 2 days, and then 1 day. But you want to eventually start to do it better and better as you train yourself more. So no matter what, in the end, you're going to have to do something about it, even if it's the smallest thing. Okay? Let's go over to Hannah in Japan. Hannah in Japan says, Hannah in Japan says, how to overcome fear of being judged by people who once knew about your ugly past self. Wow, okay. That's a very, very big one. Okay, so in the past, I'm sure many of us have some things in the past that weren't that good. Okay? And one of the first things that we should do, and if you don't want to, like, put it this way, I'll tell you why a lot of us have fear of, are scared if people say it, because it's something that's not acknowledged. So one of the things that people are afraid of is being judged, you said, right? So what we do is we say nothing bad about ourselves to people. Like, we try to hold this image of perfection so no one thinks that there's anything wrong with us. So then when people look at you, they think you're perfect, right? So you're building up this aura and image that you're this perfect person. But reality is, we know that no one's perfect. One of the hardest parts and things in life is to open yourselves up. And we should have people we open ourselves up to. We don't have to open ourselves up to everyone, right? But yeah, if it's something we did in the past, one thing we have to understand is it was in the past and we grew out of it. Is it shameful? Well, it's only shameful if you're the same person as you were before. But if you've grown, like, I'm going to tell you something that I think is very inspiring. At church, this is inspiring for me. At church, when I hear someone's testimony that used to do drugs, they used to do this, they used to beat people up, take drugs, sell drugs, but now they come to church and they change their life. For me, that is inspiring. It is. It's so inspiring to know that people can change, that they were once like this, but they changed to this. And this is why part of our lives, and people, like, I'm not sure if you're a person of faith or not, part of your faith is talking about what my life was like before. The moment you start hiding things is the moment you'll never hang out with these people. You'll never want these people, like, oh no, if they meet, they'll find out everything bad about me. Everyone's got a bad past at different levels, right? The moment you try to hide it is then you're probably thinking that everyone is perfect except you. The answer is everyone's got an ugly past, right? And sometimes with people that are close to us, it's good to share it. You got to share the ugly side. Like, this is what I was like before. It's not anymore, but this is what I was like, and God changed me. Or I changed my life around because of this. And when people hear that, it's actually more inspiring because people now realize we're all the same. And we all went through struggles and difficulties, and we all overcame them. And this is what gives them inspiration and hope. Okay? So yeah, it is a difficult thing, but sometimes we hide too much, or we think that people won't like us. So that's kind of more of a personal thing more than an outside thing. Oh, they're going to say bad stuff. If you're someone who's comfortable and understands that you've changed, then when they say this, it's like, yeah, that was my life before. That was really what my life was like before. Yeah. Right? So it's something that we have to deal with inside of our hearts also. All right? Yeah, good question, Hannah. Let's move on to the next question. We're going all the way to Diane in the Philippines. Woo! Right? How to overcome my fears and turn them into my strengths rather than my weaknesses. Yeah, you know, you've heard the cliche, turn your weaknesses into strengths. Yeah, and that's it's true. How do you overcome your fears? And honestly, one thing that we're gonna have to realize that's gonna be the biggest thing, that is like the number one thing the number one theme of every single talk I have is no matter what, nothing will change until you do something about it. Like, that's for every bubble talk I have. All my advice, everything that I give, nothing matters if you do nothing about it. Everything starts with you. And it's a matter of, wow, okay, so this is what I gotta do to overcome my fears, right? And turn them into my strengths. And the answer is this: not all your fears have to turn into your strengths. They don't. Overcoming them doesn't even mean they have to be your strongest things after that. Overcoming them just means that it's not a weakness anymore. It may not even be a strength. It doesn't have to be that great. But if you have these weaknesses, you want to work on them one by one. Start with one. And one thing about the human brain is it is impossible for us to multitask. Or the better way of saying it is you can't do two things really well at the same time. Your brain doesn't function that way. And this is why we have to be the ones that, understanding our brains, I would take one thing first and slowly start to train and exercise that part, bit by bit by bit, right? But start with one thing. And when you get good at that one thing, it'll carry over with that confidence to the next thing. And every time you do another one, your confidence actually gets higher and stronger. And you'll actually be faster and faster at overcoming your fears too. All right, Diane? Thank you, Diane, in the Philippines. Let's move on to... who's next? Okay, Aaron in Japan. Aaron in Japan says, there are times when fear is just in our heads. But there are times when fear comes from bad experiences we had in the past. How can we strengthen our hearts when past experiences hold us back? Okay, so actually, they're both the same thing. Let's put it this way. There are times when fear is just in our heads, okay? So, oh no, I'm fearing, right? Because it's dark in there, right? But then some of them come, it's like a trauma, you're saying, right? A trauma, something you went through in the past, and you have this trauma in yourself, like, oh my gosh, ah. An example I'll give to you, I like to give this example, is always like fear of water. When you're young and 2 years old or 3 years old, you fall into like 1 foot, 2 foot pool and you almost drowned, and what your brain fires off is water is bad. So from that point on, your brain is so scared of water. Now, Aaron, I'm assuming you're like 180 centimeters tall. Like you're like 6 feet tall now. Honestly, if you were to go into water that's 1 or 2 feet, even if you lie down in the water, you still wouldn't drown. You know what I mean? But then because of that fear, we're like, no, not water, right? And the same thing is all in our hearts and our brain. What's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is start small, right? And also, one thing I also would do is I would start reasoning with myself. Because when it comes to like swimming, like think to yourself, okay, I almost drowned when I was young, so it's really, really scary. So right now, if there's like a puddle outside that's like this much, you know, when you're out in the rain, you know the funny thing about people in swimming pools is, but when they're out in the rain, they're not scared, right? So you know that it's specifically for that situation. What you do is you go step by step. Put your feet in the water, you're fine, right? Come out. You don't have to go any more deeper, right? And what you're doing is you're slowly facing and going against these things step by step by step by step, right? So, you know, I understand that these things are very, very, like, say, traumatic things or really, really bad experiences. I would say 2 things. This is one thing that you have to understand is when fear sets in, one of the first things that changes physiologically is your breathing. And that's why they say whenever fear sets in, the first thing you should try to control physically is your breathing. When you control your breathing, right, this is when you can actually literally calm yourself down. Right? Even when you know, like, oh, I shouldn't be thinking this way. When you get there, you're gonna get really nervous. First thing is control your breathing. And that's like one of the biggest exercises that is taught about people to overcome like fears and whatnot. And I really hope that for you, I know, Aaron, we've talked before, you're a person of faith. I would pray before it, control my breathing, and step by step. Like, don't just start jumping into pools that are like 15 feet deep. That doesn't make any sense, right? Start with a foot. Start with just the steps and just sit in the pool, and that's it, right? Something very, very easy, right? Start it simple and slow, right? You're just basically retraining your mind. Just like that Navy SEAL, where in the beginning, if you hear gunshots, everyone's like this, and people are freaking out because they hear gunshots. But then if you keep hearing gunshots all the time, what eventually happens to you? It's nothing. You hear a gunshot, and it becomes a normal part of your life, and you're actually more calm from that point on, right? So in the same way, you need to train yourself, and it's going to take a little bit more time. Control your breathing. Definitely meditate or pray before, in those moments. All right, Aaron, thank you for that question all the way from Japan. Let's go next question. Next question is Ivan in the Philippines. How do you train yourself from the fear of rejection or being rejected whenever you want to talk to someone or invite them to something? Wow, okay. So for me, I was a missionary. I went to bus stops. I went to libraries. I went to parks, just off the street, universities. I would go off. And honestly, I would get rejected maybe 99% of the time. And of the 99% of the time, probably about 10 to 15% are like really rude. Like really rude. Like they won't even look at me and they just walk by. And how do you get over the fear? Well, after a while, like put it this way, after a while, what comes into my mind is kind of interesting. In my mind, what happens was I realized at a certain point that I am so concerned about people I have no idea who they are that reject me, right? But when it comes to the people I'm close to, it's okay. I'm like, wait a second, shouldn't I be more affected by the people who are close to me rather than those that I don't know, right? And that's why one of the things you have to understand to yourself, you have to reason with yourself too. Like, why am I scared of rejection? So if I were you, like what I would do to train people is, what we do is, we just go out. I would take them with me. And I would go myself. This person would come with me. I would talk to people. They reject me, whatever. I was like, all right, cool. Let's go to the next guy. I just make it really fun. And the person in their brains would be like, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's not that bad. Oh, it's not that bad, right? It's you're training and learning in your mind how it works. So you have to also think to yourself is, what is my mind, or how does my mind work? Every time something bad happens, do I become negative? Right? How do I train that to be better? Right? So now you're thinking to yourself is, what part of my brain do I need to change? What do I have to train? I got to train and change something, right? And sometimes it's not about going out, but sometimes it's just the way that you react to a situation, right? Like when people get critiqued or people say bad things about them, sometimes the very first thing is like, hey, you did this. Well, you did this! And that's their automatic reaction, right? And these are some things we have to learn how to change and train too, right? Everything we're going to talk about here is finding the core of where the issue is and training it step by step. Train it step by step. Is it hard to be rejected? Well, it depends what it is. Like for instance, if I'm getting rejected after I propose to my girlfriend and she says, I don't want to marry you, that's pretty bad, right? That's terrible. But if it's someone I don't even know, it's a stranger, and they say no, it's like, well, you know what? I'm probably never going to see this person again. And even if I do, they're probably not going to even remember me anyways. And I start to reason with myself. Like, I'm not going to reason. It's like, imagine, can you imagine that really? Like, imagine a stranger. Imagine you're walking by and you see a stranger and you say hi, and the stranger doesn't say hi back. Do you like do you get on the ground and start crying? He didn't say hi to me. No one does that. It's like, hi. They just say hi, whatever, and you just move on. You just move on. It doesn't really make a difference, right? You have to reason with yourself sometimes. And then after you reason with yourself, you have to slowly change your mind to go that way, right? Everything's about training. All right, thanks, Ivan. Yeah, that's something that I struggled with a long time ago, too. Sometimes I struggle with it, too, even now when I haven't done things in a long time. All right, next question is Hannah in the Philippines, most likely. What is your greatest fear? Wow, that's a great question. And how do I overcome it? Well, if it's my greatest fear, it's probably I haven't overcome it. Like, what is your greatest fear? And how do you overcome it? I'm just like going, if it's my greatest, I don't think I've overcome it, right? What is my greatest fear? Because I have a lot of fears that are at the top, right? There are a lot of fears. I guess one of the big ones would be the fear of not being accepted. Like that's a big one, right? Fear of not being accepted, right? Like even if you do something and you do something well and people don't accept, well, you know what? Let me try to think of that one because I'm trying to think about this to myself. Fear of not being accepted. There's got to be a bunch of these. Because, everyone has a fear of being left out, but that's not my greatest one. Because as I've hit over 40, I prefer being alone. Life changes, right? Oh, what is my greatest fear? Well, I guess at this point in my life, doing something that really irreversibly hurts someone that I really love. Like irreversibly, like something so bad, like just to see them in a ton of pain. Like it's someone that I really, really care for, they care for me. To do something that would actually like cut deep into their heart. I think that would be one of the fears. But and as a guy, I think fear of failure is a huge thing, by far. Fear of failure. Kind of feeling that you have to do well in everything. And the fear of failure is a huge one too. And honestly, fear of failure, overcoming it there's a lot of things I like. I have an overabundance of confidence, but sometimes that overabundance will lead me to big mistakes, right? And those big mistakes will cause a lot of problems. And then those problems in turn, you have to deal with so many other different things. Now you're starting to make me think, Hannah, about all these things that I'm scared of. But I do have a bunch of things. It's not just one thing. There's a bunch of things. Huh? Cockroaches? Not really. They just startle me. If you want it, next time I'll bring a cockroach and I'll eat it. Just kidding. Right, I'm not gonna eat it. Yeah, but I can pick one up and throw it away. Yeah, but it's startling when all of a sudden it just shows up, right? Yeah. But yeah, you know what, Hannah, I'm gonna have to think about that one. Like, what's my greatest? That's a hard one. But definitely there are some that I've already overcome. Like, for instance, speaking in front of large audiences, that was a huge fear. If when I never did that before, I was so used to one-on-ones, but speaking in front of large crowds. And then at one point, I spoke in front of like over 1,000 people when I was in Korea, in front of a university. So those are things that took a lot of time, and I would have to say that it took a lot of mistakes, and the mistakes. The good thing about the mistakes for myself was I had a good support group of people that supported me and allowed me to go again, right? So that's another important thing, I think, is to have a good support group with you also. There's a lot of things that we go through, and I'm sure that we struggle with them a lot, whether it's a fear of failure, fear of being embarrassed, like people laughing at you, or feeling stupid, right? There's a lot of those things, and slowly we have to strengthen ourselves, so we're confident with ourselves that even when those things happen, it's not really a big deal, right? And I realize that with experience and with time, and as you go through more and more of these things, it's actually like, even for myself now, as I've reached I'm like 42 this year. It's a lot of things are easier than before. Not everything, but a lot of things are. Yeah, not everything though, but a lot of things are much easier as we gain more experience in them. Thank you for making me think very deeply about my greatest fear. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, let's go to the next question. Ichigo says, what could I do if I'm stuck in the comfort zone for quite a long time? If you're stuck in the comfort zone, get out. The best thing to do is find something that you're not used to and go and do it with someone else, but don't do it by yourself. Because if you're too stuck in a comfort zone, it's better to go with a friend and do it together with a friend. Yeah, so much better. Or someone who's comfortable with it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, one of the best examples someone gave to me is when you don't know how to walk very well, but when your parents are holding your hands while you're walking, you're confident, right? When you have someone strong who's done it before. If both of you aren't good at it, then it becomes kind of discouraging. Go with someone who's good at something. Go with them, see how they do it. Like, wow, they're really good. And that's like your parents holding your hands while you're walking. You gain so much more confidence. So the one thing I do suggest to you, go with someone who's very, very good at something that you want to try out. And they can definitely help you out along the way. Great question, Ichigo. When's the question coming up? Not yet? 2 more? Okay. Cece in the UK. Wow, there's a lot of questions today. CC in the UK says, how do you overcome the fear of first impressions? The fear of first impressions means the fear of you giving your first impression. Okay, so the fear of you giving the wrong impression. Well, when it comes to first impressions, I'm going to tell you this one thing is, if you're ever afraid of something, or like say when it comes to first impressions, one thing I would really, really do is I would prepare. Yeah, like say even like a job interview, meeting someone for the first time, be ready for it. And what do you mean? Well, how do I get ready for a first impression, right? Well, like for instance, if you have a hard time talking to people about interesting things, then research some interesting things to talk about. Look at the news. See what you talk about with the news. Like even with the job interview, if you're gonna do a job in finance, you gotta read up about finance. What's the news going on in the world about finance? So whenever they ask questions, you can tell them about it, right? In the same way too, first impressions, depending where you're going, who you're meeting. One thing is you should prepare. Preparing is a great thing you should do, right? Always prepare, right? Especially if you're not sure of what's gonna happen, make sure you prepare more than anything else, okay? So your first impression, prepare something. Prepare talking about, like, it could be pop culture, depending on how the age of the person, like K-pop or, news, what's going on in America, what's going on in China, all these different, there's so many things you could prepare. But get yourself knowledgeable in a certain area and you'll be able to give a good first impression, okay? But don't go too wild, right? Don't go too wild, meaning go into stuff that like you're not really into, like in physics, have you heard about string theory? Because string theory talks about 13 dimensions, right? Don't do that, because then you're gonna the expectation of who they think you are is gonna be so different, okay? All right, so this means we're gonna get into our question of the day, right? Question of the day. Question for the bubble tea, free bubble tea. Okay, I have a number here, and in this number, we're gonna choose the person that gives this, like whoever, if this number, let's say, is 7, the person who gets the 7th person to get the right answer will get the bubble tea, okay? What is the question of today's? It is, which country is hosting the next Olympics? It's been canceled once already. It might be canceled again, but which country has been preparing right now? Write down that country, and whoever wins will get a free bubble tea. Start writing them down right now. Write them down. All right. Which country is hosting the next Olympics? They have been preparing, and I think they've canceled or postponed it once already until next year, and it may be postponed again. All right. Which leads us into the last question. 2 questions left. Okay, let's go to the next question. What is it? Jennifer Kim in Korea. Wow, that sounds like a very common name. Jennifer Kim. I think I know 14 of them in Jennifer Kims. I think I want all the people around me I think I want all the people around me to think of me in a good way. And this thought makes me feel tired and have some fear in meeting people. How can I deal with this problem? Okay, well, I'm gonna be honest with you, is people don't have, they don't think everyone's gonna be like really good. Like there's no really that big expectation. That type of expectation actually only comes from us. And I'm going to be very honest with you, Jennifer, because I know you're from Korea. In Korea, actually, that is a major issue in Korea, like image. That's why you'll have image consulting is a very big thing in Korea, where people are making sure that they look well to other people. And what I'm going to tell you right now is it's okay to have mistakes. It's okay to tell people what's wrong. And actually, people will respect you more when you are more open about the things that you struggle with, right? If you show yourself to be perfect, what happens is people don't want to talk to you. they don't want to confide in you. Why? Because if they're struggling and there's someone perfect, they don't feel like they can talk to them because everything is perfect about them. But you have to understand is people like themselves. Like extreme example, criminals hang out with criminals, right? They all have the same level of guilt, right? People who are righteous hang out with other righteous people because they have the same level of righteousness, right? What happens is people like people who are flawed, right? Because we know that everyone has issues and problems. And if you tell them you have something that you're struggling with, no one's gonna be like, what? You struggle with something? And the only time they'll say that is if you keep showing the perfect image. And then when you say it later on down the road, like 2 years down the road, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I thought you were perfect. But the answer is, everyone thinks everyone else is perfect. People are much more comfortable with people that are human. Image is a good thing in certain ways. But when it comes to being human, I understand that you want to look in a good way. And this is so tiring. But one thing I do suggest, Jennifer, is you need people that are really, really close to you that you can talk to about anything. And if I were to tell you there's two people you need in life, number one is you need really, really close friends you can say everything to. And the second person is a mentor. A mentor doesn't mean your close friend or best friend. It's someone that you can get advice from, right? So even for myself, I mentor a lot of people, not friends, mentoring. Like they ask for advice, right? They'll tell me what's going on with them, and I try to give them advice more than anything else. And those two things are absolutely necessary. The reason why, if you're so tired, is if you're trying to show a good self to everyone around you, including your close friends, then actually they're probably not that close. They're probably not that close. When you're very, very close and best friends, this is when you can say everything. Yeah, and there's like, even for me, I would say there's only like 3 to 4 people in my life that I'm very, very just, maybe 5 people that I'm very open. I'll say everything. But I know and I trust them. And that's when I'm not like, holding everything in, and then I'm so tired because I'm trying to show everyone a good, it's very, very unhealthy. You need somewhere to let out. There's place to come in, and there's things you need to let out. So Jennifer, if anything, you need to have really, really close friends, and you need a good mentor too, a very good mentor, okay? Let's go to the last question for today. Madeline Ong. Madeline Ong says, what could you do if you're unsettled while in the dark? How would you rationalize while being surprised or startled by the littlest noises? Okay. That's normal. Don't worry. If you're in the dark, your amygdala's firing like crazy, right? So don't think that's a weird thing. And that's not something you really have to train, right? But if you want to train it, just stay in the dark all night. Don't ever turn on any lights. Just stay in the dark all night. And eventually you're gonna get comfortable in the dark, right? So if you're kind of like, oh, it's dark, I'm kind of scared, that's kind of a normal thing that your brain is firing off anyways because you can't see, which means your brain is thinking, what if something hits me? Because remember, way back in the past, human beings were at night, there's no fire, it's all dark, and then an animal can kill you. They'll smell you and they'll kill you, right? So that's why you're like, oh. Nowadays, we have to realize there's like, if you're in your house, nothing's gonna kill you except for maybe a mosquito or a cockroach. And they can't kill you. They can't, right? And you know, when you rationalize while being surprised and startled by the littlest noises, yeah, that makes sense. I'm gonna be honest with you, I scream a lot too. I do, but you know what? I don't care. I'm like, right? And then all of a sudden people are like going, why do you scream? I'm like going, shut up. Let me do what I want. Oh my gosh, and then I go to my room and I pee my pants, right? No, I'm just kidding, right? But for being unsettled in the dark, you just gotta get used to the dark. You do. That's why sometimes, have you ever played that game where you have an obstacle course and you memorize it and then you turn off the lights or you blindfold and you have to go through the obstacle course in the dark? Yeah, like you just gotta get used to it. Just gotta get used to it. Yeah, and all you're doing is getting your brain used to the darkness. Yeah, so if you do wanna get yourself not startled by those littlest things, yeah, especially in your home, there's no way you should be, there's no way that you should feel threatened in your house. The only thing you're threatened by is the darkness, right? You're actually not threatened like someone's in your house. No one's thinking that, right? But most people are just threatened by darkness because in the past, people died in the darkness, animals would kill them. We still have that in our heads, right? However, in this day in society, even if you were in the dark outside, most likely the chances of you dying is so slim. It is. It's very, very slim, right? So, you know, for Madeline, I understand though, but it might not be something that's a big issue, right? You might have other bigger things that you want to deal with rather than being surprised and startled in the dark. If you want, I'll come over and we can both be startled and be scared in the dark, because I'm scared of the dark sometimes too, like, especially when I know someone's trying to scare me, that freaks me out, right? But, and I'm gonna tell you why, okay? The reason why I get so startled in the dark and I get scared a little bit easily, because I have an older brother that in the past always like scared the crap out of me all the time. Sometimes literally scared the poo out of me, literally. But that's when I was really young, not now. Never happens now. Just want to make sure you guys know that. Okay, cool, either way, right? So, yeah, it's something that I dealt with when I was younger, but that's fine. And I accept it. I accept it. I'm scared of the dark, okay? I am, sometimes. All right. I think that's the last question, right? Lots of questions, but today, who are the winners of bubble tea? It is Jenny on Facebook and CC on YouTube. Who's CC? CC, Jenny, I don't know who you guys are. Hopefully I get to see your pictures next week when you buy your bubble teas. And then, why? Today's number was what? Oh, today's number was 2. The second person to get the number right in YouTube and in Facebook were able to get their bubble teas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Both Jen and Cece, make sure you email us and claim your drinks. And remember, subscribe on our Espresso with YouTube channel. Click the notification button. And also, those of you who want to support us on Patreon, we have a Patreon account. And Saturday, come out to Saturday Bible studies, 1 p.m. Anyone can join. Come join us 1 p.m. Malaysian time. We'll see you guys there. Everyone, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.